give us a prologue leading up to your book called Jericho.
Well,
But
it's a
let's go
long
ahead and start.
story. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
Oh,
It's
good.
long,
I
a
have a cup
long
of
journey.
coffee. You
Okay,
have
I do
one
too.
too.
I have one
So
too. Yes.
let's go.
There we go.
Oh, good morning, everyone. And good morning, Diana.
Hello.
Now, just a little backstory, although Diana already knows this backstory. We met at Comic-Con in Tampa in 2022. And it was one of those things where, there were other authors there, but Diana's entire presentation setup were just outstanding. They really put me into the place where I really want to know who this creator was. And then I had the good judgment of picking up the book and actually reading the first paragraph
In front of me.
in front of you. Yes. Which was a pleasure for me, because I had read other first paragraphs that day that just did not actually cut it at all. But in this case, Diana did an amazing job. And so what I wanted to do was I wanted to bring Diana onto the program to talk about her background, her history, and her creative process. Because I got to tell you, there's definitely something going on there. And however we can tap into that, I want to figure out how it works.
Okay, so I'm the child of military, actually multiple generations military, and so I moved every year, every 3 years, sometimes multiple times during the year of my life, and I spent about 3 years in England, which that was during I'm pretty sure it was first through third grade. I'm pretty sure that was first, and then
It's hard to know
third.
because they count differently there.
They count differently.
I know the alphabet. What is Z? What is Z? Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
And the year, they call them years instead of grades. I know when I got back to the States, it was fourth grade. So it had to have been first through third. So they fostered this more creative approach to study for the younger kids. And I don't know that it's still that way now, but at the time, so like gym class, they put music on and we were supposed to just move to the music. So like Edvard Grieg in the Hall of the Mountain King, they put that on and then they just let you go run around.
Yeah, so not making you play dodgeball or embarrass yourself on a basketball court or whatever else that was going on.
Exactly. We would do things like that, but most of it, it was about 50-50. We would do these creative things and then not do creative things. We'd do sports. So I was exposed to thinking outside the box, creative, go with whatever you're feeling at the moment. And then I came to the States and I'm an overachiever and I was behind on math and science. So I plugged right into the math and science, focused all on that, was getting good grades. We would do, I think history class was pretty fun because for me, because I wasn't in the American system from the very beginning, a lot of the history I didn't know. So I was like, oh, it's new stories. These are cool stories. Let me listen to these stories. You're always told you got to get a career that supports you. You have to go where the money is.
What do you want to do for, yeah.
And I remember my dad asking me, what do I want to do? And I'm like, all I want to do is sit at home and read books. That's it. That's all I ever want to do with my life. I just want to sit home and read books. And that wasn't entirely accurate. What I wanted to do was sit home and just daydream all day long. That's what I wanted to do. But I didn't see how daydreaming would get me paid. So I switched to, I just want to read books.
And then that sounds like an activity anyway.
Yeah, you can get paid to read books, right? So the 4-year program was a business and international business degree. So I'm like, well, okay, business isn't bad. Let me go into business. I went to the school. I did 1 year of it and I did well. I had all A's, but I hated it. I hated it so much. And
you went against your spirit.
Yeah. So I ended up coming back to the States and ended up getting into a community college just to figure out what it is I actually wanted to do, because that was a lot of money for not knowing what I wanted to do.
Yes.
I didn't want to spend that. So I randomly walked into the theater at my community college and I just wanted to try it, just see what it was like.
Sure.
So I tried.
So you hadn't done any acting in high school at all? No high school plays? Nothing really?
I did acting in England because they do the plays every 3 months.
Of course.
And then I did not do any plays in junior high. High school, I auditioned for a play and I didn't make it. And then senior year, they put me in the musical just because I was a senior. I did take a performing arts class in high school and my teacher told me I was terrible. So I was like, oh, well, he must know what he's talking about. So I must not be very good. Okay, well, then I'm not going to do acting.
Wow. Hold on a second, because that is such a common thread that I find where one person can absolutely derail your hopes, your dreams, your aspirations, your self-perception.
Yeah.
And completely throw it off. I mean, well, how did that turn out in the end?
Well, I avoided acting, but I did like theater because I saw a performance of Dracula, and the actor went, because he's on the stage, and then all of a sudden I hear him behind me and I'm like, oh my goodness, Dracula's gonna kill me. But this is so cool. Just the effect that the actors had on the audience was so incredible. I'm like, I want to be able to do that. So going into this community theater, I signed up for an acting class because I didn't know anything else about theater.
Okay.
And they, as part of their program, you have to do hours in the shop to help build the sets and lighting and all that.
Yep.
So I show up the first day on set to help work in the shop, and I don't think I left there for at least 24 hours. I was there overnight. They were running behind. They had a performance coming. They had to finish the set. I'm good with tools. I can build stuff, so I'm there. We ended up, I think I slept under a table at one point. And like, I just stayed and I was hooked. So I'm like, okay, well then this is where I am. I can do theater. I can do theater still and be creative and all of this. And I can just do it behind the scenes. So I ended up going to lighting, going into prop making, going into set design, all of that
because you can't act.
Because I can't act.
Right.
I did audition for a play the second year that I was there, and it was a very gruff character. Like she was really, it's from Mousetrap for any of your viewers who know it, and Miss Casewell. And she's kind of like a very serious, very feminist kind of, I can take on the world kind of character.
Okay.
And I was just playing the shop girl, the technical director shop girl. So I walk in and I do my thing and they loved it. So I got cast as her. And it was my first time actually being on stage in years. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to go all out. I'm going to go all out. I'm going to do this. I'm not a smoker, but this character is notoriously a smoker. So I learned how to smoke without actually smoking because I didn't want to get addicted. But I would study how people move, the things they do with their mouths, the things they do with their hands. So I learned how to look like a smoker.
So you were a convincing smoker, exactly.
So I was a convincing smoker. So silly that's what it was. Anyway, I did audition for a couple more because now I'm like, oh, well, I can do this. Let me try it again. And I didn't get roles in a lot of the other ones other than like a furniture mover and that kind of thing.
Right.
But at that point, I was like, that's okay. I know I'm good at technical theater. I know I can do that. So going into my 4-year program, because I finished my associates, there was a state school. I had set up an interview with the technical director, had my portfolio. I found out they were doing auditions the same day. And I'm like, you know what? I might as well just try it. Like there's no harm in it. And then I can say I tried it and it didn't work. And that's why I'm in technical theater.
That is such a great theme though. Go ahead. We'll come back to that.
I walk into the audition. I didn't even get to finish the second monologue. Didn't even finish. The lady she ended up being my professor. She's like, you're an actor. You're coming here. I don't want to hear anything else. You're coming here. And I told her, well, I'm actually here to meet the technical director. She's like, no, you're not. You're not. She walks me over to the bursar's office, head that way to go sign me up for the acting program.
And here you have another single person at that inflection point that just bing turns your creative career around.
Yep.
And it's Oh, it is so awesome when that happens. It's so tragic when it doesn't.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
let's fast forward now a bit and tell
Mm-hmm.
me, what have you now done in the acting field since then?
So that program, I had to do all 4 years again. So I did a full another, so 6 years for an undergrad.
Mm-hmm.
One of those semesters, I went to Moscow to study with the Moscow Art Theater School. That's the school attached to the theater,
My God.
Stanislavski. That was the big draw to that school, was I got to go do that, and that was incredible. And then coming out of that, I found that I didn't like the business of acting. So I love acting, but I'm like, I wasn't prepared for the business of acting. I'm in the
Okay.
creative mindset set of like a creative. I go in and I love the work I'm doing and I want to make an impression and an impact. So they're going to love me and it's all going to work out. That's not the business of acting. That is
No.
not. You have to approach it as a business. It is a job that you show up, you do your job, you get paid, you walk away. That's it. And I went to New York. I tried Chicago. I went to New York, and things were not going well at
Okay,
all.
you mean
And
Chicago the city or Chicago the play?
Chicago, the city,
The city.
because my
Okay, all
school
right.
was outside of Chicago. I tried Chicago, didn't work. Tried New York, like moved to New York, and a whole kinds of craziness in New York. I was there for a little over a year, and I'm like, this is not what I want to do. So I got an opportunity to go to the Netherlands with my dad, because he was still military. I went to the Netherlands, kind of regrouped, and I'm like, maybe acting's not really for me. Like, I love it, but maybe that's not the path I need to be on. So I ended up going and getting a job on a cruise ship as a waiter.
Oh, well, there
Um,
you go.
because I love traveling, and I could wait tables, because yes, I can do that. And I figured, why not wait tables on a cruise ship? Because then I'm traveling and waiting tables. I could do this great. So I got a job there and I worked on the cruise ship, and I was convinced by the engineers on the cruise ship to maybe go get my license so that I can actually get paid a lot more money and actually work on the ship, because I liked working on the ships, cruise ships, not all ships, cruise ships. And they're like, you'd make a great officer. You should go and get your license. So on a whim, I apply. On a whim, I get accepted. Not only did I get accepted, I got a scholarship. And I'm like, I have an acting background. You're really going to give me a scholarship for this? But yeah, sure. So I get in, I'm doing my master's degree and a license program, which is a 4-year program constricted into a 2-year program. Plus, so one semester I was taking 36 credit hours, and half of
Oh
those
my
were
God.
online and half of them were in class. So I didn't sleep. I ended up sailing on our training ship. I went back to the cruise ship because I knew people on the cruise ship. I went back to the cruise ship. I worked as a cadet, which is like a junior officer. And so worked on that. I did, my last time at sea was 8 months straight. And there is no room for creativity on a ship. Everything has to be documented.
Oh, yeah.
Everything has to be by the rules, because there's so much money on the line and so many things that can go wrong.
So much can go wrong. Yes.
It's all checklist.
Hey,
So I was going crazy because I've completely just given up my creative, like whatever of me, creative part of my spirit. I've completely written it off. I'm like, this one, I'll make money. I'll have a degree. I'll be working on ships. At least I get the adrenaline rush of the 2% that something goes wrong. And you basically are like, well, I might die right now, because that's reality. So, because you're the doctor, you're the firefighter, you're the police, you're everything on a ship.
You're everything
it's
on
like,
the ship.
You are the help.
No,
there
yeah,
is no help.
you are the entire
the
container of authority.
That's it.
Yeah.
So like, I learned how to fight fires. I learned not only how to fight fires on a ship, which is almost the opposite of fighting a fire on land, because you can't put more water on the fire, otherwise the ship will sink.
Exactly.
So you have to like figure out how to smother it.
You have to suffocate it. Yes, exactly. Without using water. Yep.
Without using water.
Which
so I learned all these things. I was like a first responder, so we had to take medical classes. So I have all this training and no creativity, and it would get to the point that I would have to sneak down to one of the cargo holds, which I wasn't supposed to be down there. I'm not in school anymore. I'll get in trouble. I wasn't supposed to be down there, and it was actually dangerous because the oxygen levels can drop because of rust. People have died going into a hold that's been sealed off for too long. But, you know, I was so crazy. I'm like, at this point, I don't care if I die. At least I'll go like that. Like, I don't really care. But I'm going down there. I'm like, it's big enough. And we do have the door, the little hatch open. So maybe there's enough oxygen. I sneak down there every day at about 7 o'clock and I put music on and just move. I wouldn't say it's dancing. I'd say it's that creative, like you just move as you're inspired by
Something
music.
like a second or third grader might do.
Yeah, exactly. So I, yeah, that's literally what I did. I would put on Edvard Grieg in the Hall of Mountain King and just move.
Exactly.
So I did this for a year, or not a year, an hour every day for the 8 months that I was on the ship. And if I couldn't go down there, I was on edge to the end.
I can imagine.
It was bad. And that was the turning point for me creatively. Of all of the things I've done, that was my turning point of I am a creative, and it's not so much that I want to create, there's a part of me I have to create in order to be mentally sound.
So do you think that was actually a creative revelation or oxygen deprivation? I mean,
you would think it was oxygen deprivation, but maybe I needed the oxygen deprivation to figure it out. For me, it was definitely a revelation, like a personal, like, oh, wow, no, creativity must be a part of some form of my life or I cannot function. I graduated, almost didn't graduate because of my license. I did graduate. There was an episode you're supposed to do a live simulation, and I guess my instructor forgot that he put a Russian aircraft carrier right smack dab in the middle of my lane and then was on the radio, so I couldn't communicate that the ship was coming at me. So I ended up doing something I shouldn't have done by the rule book, but it was the only way I could figure I would get out of it. So again, my creative brain's like, well, we could try this and see. I'm sure I probably should have failed, but I think he figured out it was his bad. So I did pass.
So basically, you beat the Kobayashi Maru. Well done.
Basically,
well done.
That's literally what that was. I did beat the Kobayashi Maru. I never want to do that again, ever.
Well, once you beat it, where's the challenge?
Yeah, you know? Oh my goodness, it was so scary. And it was while I was applying for jobs that the creative, now that I've freed myself from this rigor of checklists, it's like all of a sudden the creative dam just burst and everything's coming to me, and I'm seeing stories and I'm seeing this and I'm seeing movies play in my head. And that's actually what led me to writing my book. I never wanted to be a writer. That was never, for me, I experience things and I see things. It's not in words. It's never in words for me.
Okay, I want to take a time out there because you may, or some people aren't even aware, but aphantasia is a thing. It is something, other people deal with, that they don't actually experience the world with pictures in their heads at all. They have, depending upon how far, where they are on the scale, because at one end you have aphantasia, at the other end you have hyperphantasia. Okay. And it sounds like you're much closer to the hyperphantasia side of the spectrum.
Yes.
But on the aphantasia side, and both are perfectly normal. Okay. There's nothing wrong with either one, but they will experience almost exclusively through words, feelings, communication, because that's all that's there. And they actually, it's really funny how many people with aphantasia, the actual full blown, way at the end of the spectrum, are shocked to find out that people actually do picture things. That it's not just a turn of phrase, colloquialism. That you actually see things. And when they try to imagine it, they're like, oh my God, it must be like you're delusional. And so basically you're delusional. So there we go. That was my whole point. I love creative delusions. So
yes, they're so much fun.
So you've got, stories, you've got screenplays, you've got all these ideas.
I have this, at this point I had 3 screenplays. And I said, at some point you actually have to do something with them. A screenplay you cannot do by yourself. You cannot make the movie by yourself. There has to be a team. So I went to California. I had friends in California for my acting school, and then actually went to New Zealand to meet with a production studio there. And I met with them, and they liked the idea, and they liked everything that I was saying. And I was taking location photos of where I would put the things and all the battle scenes and whatnot. And it ultimately comes down to money. And I didn't have money. So I'm like, well, where do I get money? I have to go back to California. So I went back to California, and I never did. That's not true. I did one thing acting wise. It was background work, just because I knew I could get into background work because it's rather simple to be a background. Sure. I did one thing background, but the whole time I was in California, I was there for 2.5 years. No acting whatsoever. It was all just trying to get the screenplay pitched to somebody to get the funding to make it. Yep. And I did meet with people. I did talk with people. I was working at Universal Studios there, the what is it called? The amusement park. Yeah. I was working at the restaurants at the amusement park. I worked for one of their restaurants that's actually owned by Universal. So I was meeting like VIPs left and right, but nothing was kind of working for me. Yeah. So then it occurred to me, because I'm an independent person, I'm very independent. I'm like, I could write this as a book. I don't need anybody for that. I could do that myself. No. So then I started writing there, and because of, life things going on, I ended up leaving California and going to Key West, where my dad was stationed, because my dad gets really great locations whenever he's stationed places. And I'm like, yeah, how about come over here? You went
down, you were like tapping into the Hemingway vibe at that point.
Yeah, really. Yeah. So I went down there, and my dad's, of course, he's very supportive of like, oh, if my kids want to come hang out, he always loves when we come back and hang out. So he's like, yeah, come to Key West. It's great here. We got beaches. They don't have a lot of beaches down there, but he has beaches. He lied.
I've been there. I have seen the 14 feet of beach.
It's like that big. Yeah. So I went to Key West, and I ended up finished writing the book. And it's actually, and this is something I try to share to creatives who ask me, how did you write your book? How did you do this? How do you do this? We live in a time where technology is our best friend. Yes. I have self-published. I have it in Barnes and Noble. I have it in bookstores now. Like, it's everything that used to be exclusively through a major publishing house, you literally can do by yourself from your computer at home.
Well, and you know what's weird is as that industry is consolidated, I mean, you're down to what, 5 or 6 major publishing houses. That's it now. Yeah. And so the gates on those are incredible. When Penguin House or when Penguin merged with Random House, everybody wanted it to be called Random Penguin, but no. No creativity involved there, man. Yeah. I mean, it was like right there, Random Penguin. This is so internetable, and no, it was just, it became Random House Penguin. So I guess it could be a Random House Penguin. I think that's an okay thing.
Random House Penguin. That's fun.
Yeah, I kind of like that. Yeah. Or is it Penguin Random House? I don't remember. Whatever it is. But the point being, they've consolidated it down. So, but in your writing, and now we're going to turn. I assume you're talking about Jericho at this point.
Yes.
Which, by the way, Jericho. This is what the cover looks like. This is how her name is spelled. And I was a little shocked about your admission that you haven't done any workshops, because writer workshops are where the better writers I know all have honed their craft. They have absolutely committed to taking the classes, going to the retreats, spending 3 days, 4 days in Key West at a writers conference, going to Yale University Writer Conference. There's some phenomenal. I mean, here in Tampa Bay we have Writers in Paradise. So we have some. They all have their own themes and what they go like Writers in Paradise is really big for like mystery crime writers. That's what comes out of there, because it was co-founded by none other than Dennis Lehane. And people like Michael Carita came out of that program, who's pretty big author. So yeah, there are things that are generally the hallmarks of a well workshopped book.
Mhm.
And what I'm going to do is I'm going to embarrass you again. I'm actually going to read this first paragraph.
Goodness.
Okay. Yeah, there you go. That's it. Because
Oh
I
my
need
goodness.
your facial expression when you hear me. Don't worry, everybody. It's a short paragraph. But you'll wish it wasn't. That's the point. This is a really good first paragraph.
Oh, thanks.
Oh, shh, stop it. You're good. Get over it. The sound of the chariots racing along the top of the wall trembled through her body. But the only sound Rahab heard was the thunder of her own heartbeat pounding against her chest. Run, run, run. I mean, that is such an engaging opening paragraph. You've introduced so many elements of your world. Chariots, top of the wall. Boom, you instantly have an image of where you are without once stopping to say, oh, and atop, the 40-meter high wall, was topped with stone parapets and had, I can't stand the info dump.
Yeah.
Okay. And what you have here is every single word in that opening paragraph, absolutely mandatory. They are revelatory, and they are engaging. They engage your imagination, because you're having to wrap around what's going on here, because it's obvious that there's something high energy, high risk, okay, going on, and you get that with the run, no doubt about that. I mean, at that moment something huge is happening. And so how did you write that first paragraph? Because it's amazing. I want to know the story of the first paragraph and how many times you rewrote it.
I don't think I rewrote it more than twice. That one kind of came like once okay, so in the screenplay, that's not how the story begins. I saw it play out in the screenplay of a shot of the cameras watching a stone on the ground, and the stone starts shaking, and then the chariot barrels past, and you see the chariot going around, you see the giant, and then you see Rahab on the balcony as like through the giant. And then it cuts to Rahab, and she's sitting there, and you can she's processing the panic of I can't leave, but I want to run. And so trying to take a visual and turn it into a written piece, I found out why books are never the same as movies and movies are never the same as books, because they're two separate mediums and you tell a story differently in those mediums. So Rahab was not as big of a character in the screenplay in that scene. You're getting more of the giant as he's racing around the chariot. But I needed someone to be the reader's perspective, and Rahab seemed the most logical because she's such a main character in the book. I needed her to be my main character from the get-go.
Of course, yeah.
And once I figured out it was going to be
your protagonist, she's your main POV.
Yes.
Yeah, you got to have that.
Yeah. So once I decided it was going to be Rahab, who is my audience's window into the story, then it was okay. So what is she feeling at this moment? And I needed to get the chariot in, I needed to get she's freaking out, and I needed to get where they were. And those were the only things I was focused on. And that I didn't want to say, and she feels the chariot. So I'm like, no. I don't need to say she feels it. Of course she feels it. So that's, once I actually got that first paragraph, that was the paragraph I was like, okay, I know at least my first paragraph is good. The rest of the book could be terrible, but the first paragraph is...
Okay, nice.
Like, hinging on that one.
Content warning, rest of book sucks. No. But...
No, the rest of the book is actually a lot of fun. Yeah.
So, this is one of the things that, it's funny, a lot of people have been raised on the visual media. Okay. And now I'm going to take the fact that, raised on visual media, wanting to write screenplays, and being towards the hyperphantasia end of the spectrum. Okay. You have a lot of the elements for a failed novel. Because people who do that do exactly what you were thinking. They try to write the screenplay and just convert it over. And you said something. What was she feeling at that point? That gets left out. It's completely gone. And it absolutely has to be the centerpiece of what you're writing. And if you want to read an example of the opposite, okay, screenplays that were made into books because they couldn't get them made into a movie. Hunger Games. Hunger Games is written like stage direction.
Yep.
And so you end up with this, like, it's just not a satisfying read, because
it's not as satisfying of a read. Yeah, that's true.
Because you're not in the feelings. Now you want to go on the other side and deal with an enormous range of emotions that are being conveyed in the most subtle ways, but clearly there. You want to look at the Murderbot diaries. Murderbot is a construct. It is I can't really say it's an android or a bot or any of those things. Those are something else. It's not a cyborg per se, because a cyborg is a human that is modified with mechanical and digital implants, whereas Murderbot is a construct. All of his human parts were fabricated, grown in a lab, including his brain. Or its brain, excuse me. Its brain. Okay, because it literally has no gender. But it is one of the most amazing, I don't want to downplay it in any way, but I want to say Pinocchio story. Okay. Because but at the same time, it is an incredible civil rights statement. Because these constructs have governorships. So they aren't allowed to do things. They aren't allowed to, act in certain ways, or, et cetera, et cetera. If they even have the thought of doing something, their governorship will kick in, and this construct is so smart. He's actually able to, disable his governorship.
Interesting. Okay.
And
now I have to go read the book.
Oh, books. And the nice thing is, like they're novellas for the most part. Okay, there is one full-length novel, but you can pound through the novella really fast. But this is a case where there is no reason. I mean, it is pure action, because Murderbot is a sec unit, a security unit. They're made to kill. So that's why he calls himself Murderbot. That's his name that he gave.
Interesting.
That's its name that it gave itself. Jesus, that's hard. I have done this mostly through the audiobooks, and the audiobook reader is a man, and so it is extremely biasing, away from. But in this case, that identity is so important to the function of the character, because it removes them from the world of other constructs that are maybe sex bots, as he calls them. Okay, so you've got those are built as well. And so it's like, I have, there's nothing there. And so literally no interest at all. But what's fascinating is you have this killing machine built and designed specifically for this purpose. And what happens when it finally breaks its governorship? It's like, there, I'm free. It turns around and, for all intents and purposes, watches 30,000 hours of Netflix. Anytime it's on duty and not needing 100% of its attention, it's got a second monitor in the back of its head, and it's watching its entertainment channel.
Oh my goodness.
Its favorite program is, Sanctuary Moon. And so you get all 537 episodes or whatever it is of Sanctuary Moon.
Oh my goodness.
So that's the character that you meet. And you see all the potential for emotion. But the author could have just sat there and described the scenery of these amazing planets and ships and all these things that are going on. But now it's about feeling. And that's what's compelling about Murderbot. And that's what's compelling about Jericho. Is you put feeling front and center in your writing.
Well, when I see things, there's the visual aspect. Everything comes to me in visuals, but it also comes in emotions. So I experience things the visual is always attached to an emotional for me.
Did that come from your acting?
It might
think about it, because you described a whole lot about I want to Dracula. I want to make people feel this. So acting became a kind of a feeling communication.
Yeah.
For you.
Acting for me is much more of a feeling communication than a visual communication. Exactly. I'm less concerned that it looks right. I'm more concerned that it feels right. So,
yep. Well, look at the cigarette smoking. Okay.
Yeah.
You don't want anybody to break that fourth wall and go, oh, she's not really a smoker. Look how she's holding the cigarette. And you'll see that, because like how many people actually do that whole thing anymore like this, I mean, But no.
So for me, it was actually I was given. I sent a couple of early chapters I was struggling with to a friend of mine who is a writer, someone who that's their gift. They can just words just flow out of them like water, and you're just like, well, how? Yeah. I sent it to him, and his response was, I don't know what any of the like, I got what he's feeling, but I don't know what he's looking at. I don't know what this is, like, what's happening around him. So I actually had to build more description into mine, even though it's coming from a screenplay. I had to build more description into mine because I just went with only feelings, which you can't tell a story that way either.
So I totally see where you're coming from on that. Now, what I want to do is I've got a couple questions for you. One, sure. Now your setting though is actual and historical.
The actual historical ancient Jericho, the one where they march around the city and the walls fell down. Yes.
Exactly. So this is kind of your fictionalized version, fantastic version with giants and other kinds of magical beings, which I mean, blowing trumpets and having a wall fall down is pretty magical in and of itself.
I mean, it is pretty impressive. It's funny, it's not the biggest thing that happens in the book, but yeah.
Well, yeah, you know what? But whatever survives in history is what survives. But no, this is no, this is neat because you took and one of the questions that I wanted to ask was, did your creation did your book start with a vision or a direction?
So I heard someone talking about giants in the land that is Israel now, Canaan at the time, because it was referenced Canaan. And I knew about David and Goliath, growing up. I heard stories of David and Goliath. I even heard that he had 4 brothers, so there were 5 of them. Okay, great. I didn't hear about a mountain of giants. And as I'm hearing the story of these giants in this mountain of Hebron and this 85-year-old man who goes and takes this mountain, I saw this battle scene play out in my head like Lord of the Rings, like Helm's Deep coming down the mountain and the charge of the orcs and the Uruk-hai, and like I'm seeing this play out in my head. And I'm like, why has no one made this into a movie? This would be an awesome battle scene. Like, this is an epic battle scene.
Right.
And that was the moment where I realized, hey, how about I write the scrscreenplay? So that was the driving force for
I am the no one.
When I went and
not really a flattering way to put it, but yeah, you get the idea.
So I went to my local library and looked up how to write a screenplay, and they have a book there, and I borrowed
probably
the book.
Have it on my shelf.
It's very probably. It was very standard, like you do this, and this. This is the recipe for a good movie. Right. You don't have to get creative. And I'm like, well, sure, it tells a story. There we go. So it's called Save the Cat, if you have it.
Oh, of course I have Save the Cat. Who doesn't have Save the Cat?
Yeah. Save the
so
cat.
You use Save the Cat as your basic. Okay. No,
I've got Save the Cat for my base.
Oh, where are you? Okay, I don't have Save the Cat. I got so much other stuff here. The $30 film school. I've got I wonder if I loaned Save the Cat out to somebody. Oh, that would be terrifying. But that would be me. Okay, I'm back. That's my filmmaking shelf.
There you go. Yeah. So I got that, and then to tell the story of the Mountain of Giants, you just follow the story back. I was like, oh well, Jericho was part of this sequence of events. Let me start there, because that was a good beginning.
Yeah.
And then I told the story of Jericho. Then I've got the mountain, and then there's a third story that comes after the mountain part that I'd never heard the story before, of Caleb, who's the guy, the 85-year-old guy in the mountain,
Okay.
he offers his daughter as a reward for taking this other city. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. First of all, who's this other girl? Why have I never heard her name as, you know, in the Bible? Why have I never heard of her? And I started doing research, and traditionally in the Jewish tradition, they say she's a very stubborn, very obstinate girl. She demanded more than she was promised. I'm looking at this going, no, she wasn't. No, she was smart. She was actually a very intelligent woman who figured out, well, if I'm going to have land, I need water to water my land. Let me ask for water too. So I'm like, this is a bad interpretation of this girl.
Of course.
So that's the third book and the third story. Then I started doing all this research. I'm a research, like, I don't know, that's like I love researching. Google is the most used thing on my phone. I literally am like, oh, where do hamsters come from? Guess what? They're wild in the deserts south of Russia. Like, that's where they grew up. Wild. You can get a wild hamster from the
things you
deserts
never
of
thought
Russia.
you needed to know, but you found out in the CogYard.
Right? So I Google things all the time. So I'm like doing all this research and all these things are coming up and I'm seeing them like pieced together as the story. I'm like, this is a great story. Okay. Well, now I have something I can write. And I love retellings. Beauty and the Beast retelling, I will read every single one of them. Even the bad ones, I will read it. Cinderella retelling, I will read it. Snow White retelling, I will read it. I love retellings. And so my approach to this was, well, let me do my own retelling of these stories that I haven't even heard, but they're there. So let me retell it. So
there you go. Or in this case, tell it.
Now I'm working on the second one.
It's no one telling it. So now, I mean, it's like everything else is just going to pale in comparison. When somebody goes, no, this is the real story, they'll be like, no, we got
no.
So it sounds to me like, well, let me ask you this, okay? Do you create for yourself, or is there a target audience you're looking to satisfy?
That was a question that kind of haunts me. I wrote Jericho when I was writing it as a novel. I was struggling with, how do I write something that someone's going to like? And what I came to the conclusion was, I like reading a lot of popular books. If I like these popular books, that means other people like these popular books. Let me write a book that I want to read, and hopefully other people will want to read it as well, because I know what I like to read is there's already a basis for it. So when I focus on writing something for someone else, it just doesn't work, because I don't know what the reader really wants. I'm not actually in the reader's head until the reader is there reading the book. So I have to write for myself as the reader. If I, as a reader, want to read this, then that's my benchmark. So I'm very forgiving as far as like grammar and spelling and sentence building and, you know, all of that. I did have good teaching, good education, so it's not going to be terrible, but I'm forgiving in the structure as long as the story is good. So if I were to say that there's a weak spot in my writing, it would be I'm more story heavy than grammatically correct heavy.
That's why we hire editors.
Exactly.
To fix those things.
There's points where I'm like, that might not have been the best way to say it, but the story is really good and I didn't want to break up the story rhythm. So we're just going to go.
No, and you know, the thing is, knowing the rules, okay? The reason it's not because you're going to be constrained by them, but it's because you got to know when you need to break them. Okay, when you need to have a sentence fragment, when you need to have that, you know, ellipsis that gives you that dramatic pause that is not actually appropriate in that part of a sentence. Okay, if you're writing dialogue, not everyone will speak quite so well as we do. You know.
Most people don't say the whole sentence. They say part of the sentence, and we figured out what they were going to say.
And that's the other thing is, in just about any fictionalized program, everyone speaks in, you know, full sentences, and they're absolutely perfectly constructed. Nobody ever says in the middle of a TV show. So I think, I think that idea that you're writing what you know, and what you know is you. Okay. And what you like. And if that happens to be what other people like, awesome sauce. Ow, I said I wasn't going to do that. Dang it. I'll have to edit that out in post. But
you're doing so good.
All right. So other than doing a lot of reading, have you had any courses? Have you taken any writing classes of any kind? Done anything like that?
No. I did take a writing class in college that I suspect my sorry, my phone just went off and that was the Kim Possible ringtone. Sorry, you guys caught me. Sorry.
That's okay. I'll have to edit that out too.
Yeah, right.
No, not really.
I had a teacher. I've had two English teachers who were the most challenging for me, and of course, you remember the teachers that challenge you the most.
Yeah, you hated
one of them. His challenge to me was as an orator. He actually was my English teacher who forced me to speak. So I'd have to stand and perform. And he was very, very defining. He definitely was defining for my character is, I can stand up and command a room. Absolutely. And I had to learn that. I didn't know that I could do that. I was too afraid to try. And he's like, no, you're going to stand up and you're going to recite If by Rudyard Kipling and do it well. And I was like, I could do that. Okay, great. And then the second English teacher was my first English teacher in college. I suspect he wanted to be a creative writer himself. He wanted to be a novelist.
Yeah.
And he just hadn't had his break. So he was teaching English at a college or a university.
Yeah, still waiting.
And I guess he figured out that I could write, a decent sentence. He ended up challenging me more than any writing professor I've ever had before. I did a research paper on pirates because I didn't want to do the research paper. And I'm like, well, I like pirates. So I was on a Pirates of the Caribbean kick. So I'm like, well, let me do a research paper on pirates. So I go and I swear he held me to a whole different standard than anyone else in the class.
Well, you had to write the whole thing using only 2 letters. The only 2 letters in the pirate alphabet. I
R. He gave me back my paper so many times to revise it as like, I'm used to, I do one draft, I turn it in, I get maybe a couple notes, fixing it, and boom, I'm done. I get the A. Like I get the 100%.
Right.
And he probably gave me it back 10 times. I would say 10 is not even an exaggeration. And it made me so mad because I'm like, I'm an A student. I don't turn in papers that need to come back to me 4 times. I get one chance. You get one chance to revise and it's done. And he gave it back to me so many times and he would not take it until I'd made significant changes to it. So that was probably where I learned how to communicate in words, where I had just kind of, you build a sentence, you have all of your parts of your sentence, you have your paragraphs tell a story, boom, done. That was probably defining for me, but I didn't apply it. Again, I never actually intended to be a writer. That's not my preferred medium of storytelling. And then the first editor who looked at the story, Jericho, he came back didn't even get past the second chapter. He's like, oh no, this is not how this would go. This is not even close to how this would go. You gotta change this. I'm not even gonna read it unless you fix it. And I was so mad at him too. I'm like, okay, well, I did ask for somebody to look at it. I'm going to respect that I asked them and they know what they're talking about. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to address it. And it definitely it changed the story. It changed dynamics in the story of character dynamics. Yeah, completely changed a lot of the character dynamics. And
very good.
Now having written the first one, the other thing that has done it is doing the audiobook. Listening to myself tell the story. Now I'm writing the second book. I'm like,
right. Now you recorded your own audiobook, correct?
I did that myself again because I can. So why not?
Exactly.
I could pay someone to do it, but I can do it myself. So I did. That has helped my writing as well significantly because now I'm aware as I'm writing the second book, I'm like, I'm going to have to read this to do the audiobook. So let me make it easier for myself and just make the story flow better on this end instead of after.
You flow better the first time.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, because it's, there's never enough time to do it twice, right?
And I did read a couple of books. I want to say Stephen
King's on writing. Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
I did
yes.
read
Adverbs are
his.
not your friend. Yes, exactly.
So I did read a couple of books, but I never.
I think there's more in that book than that, but I don't really remember what else it said. Adverbs are not your friend.
Adverbs are not your friend. Actually, that was the note. That was the one note that my friend gave me was you have ly all through your book. You need to take every single one of them out.
I think it's in that book that it says, you use your word processing program and search for ly, and then kill them.
Yep,
because
I was told to take
that
everyone out.
You're using the wrong word. If you have to modify the word, you're using the wrong word.
You're using the wrong word. Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
so
and
now
also
that I'm writing, I'm conscious. Okay, no LIs. Very as well.
Oh, I just had somebody text me today that something was very unique. I'm like, ow.
It's either unique or it's not. There's no very.
It's like very pregnant, No, the word is truly that you're looking for. It is truly unique. That is an okay adverb if you wish to modify. It's the only word you can really use to modify unique. Okay, it's truly not very.
Not very.
Okay, enough. Pet peeves. And today in the pet peeve department, I'm going to ask you one now. Okay, when did you finish this book? I'm going to hold it up again.
I originally finished it in 2019, I think is when I published it. And then we went right into COVID.
Yeah. And your main way of selling it is doing shows?
Originally, I was just going to do online. And my stepdad, actually, he was the one who said, he was talking to my mom. He's like, I wish Diana would just talk to people about her book because people are going to buy it. If she's talking about it, she gets so excited about it. And that sparked where can I go to meet people that I can talk about my book? Comic-Cons were the natural, that's the place where everyone comes together. So why not go there?
Yeah. And they give authors and artists, special deals on booths. You don't have to pay.
And I have giants in my book, my book, so that fits in with Comic-Con. That's really, I'm like giants. Exactly. I can go to Comic-Con.
Yeah. And you meet and you build your list, and that's what's important. Yeah. Okay, so when do you think you'll have the next book finished?
My goal is to have it by the end of this year. That's the goal.
All right, good. But now I'm going to ask you one question on the way out the door. What advice would you give yourself 20 years ago?
It's
Yeah, I gotcha.
When I was little, I was afraid. My biggest fear was that I would lose my imagination. For some reason in my head, children have imagination, adults are purely realistic.
Reputed to not have it, yes.
Yeah. And I mean, it was like an actual genuine fear of mine. I didn't want to grow up because I didn't want to lose my imagination, because that's where I lived, was in my imagination. And that's probably because I can't even go and say, oh, well, don't go into the shipping, don't go into the business, don't go into this, don't go into that, because all of those built my experience. So I'm able to tell from my unique background, and you get something from all of those things that I've experienced. So the only thing I could say would be, it's okay. You still have your imagination, even on into however old you get, you still have your imagination. It's absolutely still available to you. It's just whether you choose to give it attention or not. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that would be it.
That is cool, because that and that just rings so clearly and true to me, because one of the things that I am focusing on in the CogYard is helping people really develop their creativity, to expand it, to improve it, to really push it to the next level. And that is something that I think there's not much out there addressing. I know, because I hunt for it. And I know there's a lot of people who are, leaving their jobs. They aren't going back into the workforce. They're taking early retirement. They have, they want to know these things. They want to be able to do something, more with their time, because, they've been cruise ship captains. And now they're like, gee, I really want to want to satisfy that creator in me. And so that's why I do what I do. And you know, to help people with that, because for me it's easy. I just go, I'm gonna go do this.
I'm gonna go do this. Oh, I have an idea. Let me go do it.
We'll do it. And so
Yeah.
I don't mind challenging myself. And as a matter of fact, I have to stop thinking that I know how to do things. That's one of the fun things. But
one thing I did want to say, and this is something that I've found just by going to Comic-Cons, talking to people, there will be the crowd who come up and they're like, oh, I want to write a book. How would you go about doing it? My answer to them ultimately is, you just do it. You write. If you want to be a novelist, you want to have a published book, you want it to be great, yeah, that's fine. You can have your standard of what you want to do, but until it's published, no one will read it. You actually have to publish it. And I find a lot of people have this fear of, oh, if I do it and it's not good. Everybody has a first book. Everybody has a first book. Every author has a first book. It may not be the best. It may not be all the way to the standard that you're at. But until
Ray Bradbury who said, throw away your first million words?
Yeah. So
that's your first 12 novels.
Yeah.
So crash them.
You have to get the first book out in order to have a second book. You have to get the second book out in order to have a third book. You have to. So a lot of right.
You know what, you said you were good at math, so I'm just going to defer to you on that one.
Right?
It sounds sequentially correct,
but I mean, I have authors come up and ask me, oh, how did you become an author? How did you get published? I just published it. I just did it. That's what I did. I did it.
You know, it is almost nothing to go from. Now I'm all Mac driven, so you know, I just go in, write it in Pages, and then I can just publish as an EPUB. And then I can go to, you know, and just there, boom, I've written an ebook.
You can print it through Barnes & Noble. They have a printing press.
Yes. Yeah.
So
be my first choice, way over Amazon. And getting it out in the physical bookstores. There's just something I'm sure that you feel when you walk out and you see your book on a shelf. That's got to be incredibly rewarding.
Yeah, it's great. It's actually, I just did a book signing at a bookstore, and they have my book on their shelves because I'm there. And they had the book on a table, that first table you walk in, and it wasn't supposed to be there. It wasn't supposed to, because that was the bestseller table. But the manager had set them down while he was doing something. Yeah. While he was shelving other books, he'd set it down, and I watched people walk in and pick up my book. Of all the books on the bestseller table, mine was the one they picked up, and I'm like, okay, I've made it. I've made it. There we go.
Oh.
The thing the reason that affects me so much is I designed the cover. Everything on that cover I made. Yeah. I didn't hire someone else to do my cover. So again, that was a skill I didn't have. I had to learn how to do. So I, took tutorials online, and there's lots of things to, YouTube's a great resource to learn how to do something. So and that was probably the third, fourth draft was the final one that you see there on the cover. But I did that myself. And I've always in the back of my mind wondered how my cover compares to New York Times bestselling books. And the fact that my book was the one that they were all picking up, I was like, yes, it works. Yay.
Well done. Well done.
Nice,
All right, well, we are definitely looking now. Okay, how can people get your book? Let's start with how they don't go to Amazon first.
Yes.
Because although I know it's important to the Amazon algorithm and it throws you up in the rankings and yada yada, it's like, selling your soul to Satan, that's important. But
yeah. It's funny because I self-published with Amazon, I can track my royalties, and basically what they take is they take the printing cost, and then they take the distributor cost, which this distributor I would be paying. I would still be losing out if a bookstore had it. So it hasn't actually taken too much from me. I actually get quite a lot out of my sales from Amazon. So that's good. It is kind to me, yes, but it is a big major corporation. DianaRego.com is my website where you'll find all of
I'll put a link to that down in the notes.
Sure, great. Yeah, all of the different options that you have. The hardcover with the dust cover is the Barnes & Noble exclusive. So you have to go to barnesandnoble.com to get that one.
Okay.
They also have a paperback version.
Excellent.
And then Amazon has a hardcover, but it's like that textbook hardcover. So it has it printed on it. Not my favorite, but some people want it. And then the paperback, usually the one that I sell is through the Amazon because they're the fastest getting it to me.
Sure.
Barnes and Noble takes a little longer to print theirs.
Yep.
And then the audiobook and all of the ebooks. Pretty much every platform for ebooks you can find it on. So
perfect.
Yeah, but that's all on the website.
DianaRego.com.
DianaRego.com.
And that is perfect. And I think I thank you so much for being here to do this interview, because I have to say I just absolutely was enthralled with your work, with your writing, and your personality is so engaging. And I know that helps. But I knew there was a creative genius back in there. And so thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I had a great time.
Some of your root material with us. And that's going to be it for this time. Again, Diana, thanks for coming to the CogYard. Off and away.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.